everybody, and welcome back to OMB Reviews. I am the critic who is a cynic. Hope you're doing well, and today I'll be doing a box office preview for this upcoming weekend, which once again will see the Super Mario Bros. Film continue its domination at the #1 spot. Not any other film even coming close to this number. Right now projected this weekend domestically to make another $41.1 million, which would be a drop around 31% from last weekend. And if the numbers continue to hold in this capacity internationally as well, we're looking at the film crossing $1 billion by this Sunday, and that's before even accounting for anything that might be coming from the South Korean and Japan market. Again, remember that this film has been doing incredibly well in several overseas markets, all without those two, and that's why this film is going to make $1 billion without those two markets. And the real question is going to be, with those markets, is it going to perform well enough in those locations for it to get upwards of $1.3 to $1.6 billion? We'll have to, of course, wait and see. Right now, the early numbers coming out of South Korea are okay, but not looking true amazing. It's actually losing right now to a local release, and this is kind of going into what I've been saying in previous videos, that I think that this film is going to do incredibly well in these countries, but the real question is going to be, how well does it do, as this is still, even though roughly the estimates are that Nintendo has 50% of the production budget of this movie, meaning it's going to get 50% of the profits of this movie, and so therefore it's kind of this pseudo-Nintendo, so kind of this East-West split, but it is still also being promoted and pushed by a Western market, by a Western studio in Illumination, in Universal, and so the question is going to be, how much of an impact is that going to have on whether people go to see this movie in the mass droves that many are suspecting? And again, I'm not saying that it's not going to happen. I just do think that we obviously need to proceed with caution if we're going to be projecting giant numbers for the film in those markets. We also have a few new releases. Are you there, God? It's me, Margaret. I know nothing about that, really don't have much interest. The new film, Sisu, I was able to see this film last night. Unfortunately, it wasn't really as good as I thought. The trailer is so much better than the movie. So again, it's not that the movie's terrible, it's just that the movie, the trailer is just so much more high clipped, or rather high pace, and Sisu as a film, even though it's 90 minutes, feels a very long 90 minutes, and there are some pretty cool sequences, but again, they're few and far between, right? They're kind of masked with slow moments in between, and I just don't necessarily think it's as polished as it could be if it was in a little bit more capable hands. But that film's still coming out, and I know some people have been excited about seeing that movie. Also, big George Foreman. Again, not really much interest in that, as I don't really care much for George Foreman's story. It might be compelling, it might be cool. I just, again, not really my cup of tea. But anyway, before we go any further, please make sure to smash that like button, like that fire button, Aussie, smash the rumble button as well. Also, make sure that you are subscribed to the channel with the bell notification on, that way you know every time the video or live stream goes live on the channel. All right, so Super Mario Bros. Film projected to make another $41.1 million this weekend domestically, bringing its total domestic estimate to $491.4 million, and so is not outside the realm of possibility for the film to do better than what the projections are indicating, and we could see the film get close to $500 million domestically by the end of this weekend. And if that happens, since we have currently been seeing a pretty close 50-50 split between the domestic and international marketplace, which I think is going to eventually start to change with the numbers coming in from South Korea and Japan, where I think the international is going to start to run away with it a little bit, you are still, again, even without those markets, looking at both of these, right, domestic and international, being roughly $500 million, which is why I'm right now projecting that the chances are pretty high for the film to reach $1 billion by the end of this weekend. Obviously, a few weeks ago, I said that it's pretty much been an inevitability, right, when the numbers actually started coming in for this movie, but it is still doing incredibly well, and it is going to continue to add it to its overall total. So, hey, kudos to them. $1 billion film, literally days away, and obviously could be even closer if the numbers coming in from Japan and South Korea end up being able to push it over the edge. But even without those markets, it's looking like this is probably going to be the case. And one of the reasons why I'm able to say that is because if you look at the box office tracking from last weekend, right, the international box office especially, it made $70.7 million internationally last weekend from 78 markets, only dropping 38%. So we're seeing very consistent drops, and this is very rare. You don't commonly see the domestic international trends match up as closely as they are. So that's why, again, this film is doing something that a lot of films just really don't ever do. And that's why I think also we're going to probably see that also in Japan and maybe South Korea. Though, again, early numbers from South Korea are indicating, again, it's still too early to tell, right? But it's also, again, something that may not be doing as well as had been initially estimated by some people. But again, we'll look at those numbers and see where those numbers are coming from. But as you can see, right, $70.7 million, 38% drop, very, very strong. And so the fact that you're having around a 31% drop being projected domestically this weekend, I imagine even if you get, again, a 40% drop from last weekend, that would still be enough to be able to get this film, close enough to be able to add just enough money for it to hit, again, that $1 billion mark. And so, again, I suspect that's going to happen, but we, of course, will have to wait and see when the numbers actually come out, whether or not it's going to be able to pull that off. Are you there, God? It's me, Margaret, from Lionsgate. Again, a wide release. Don't know really anything about it. $13 million projected for that film. Evil Dead Rise expected to drop 59%. It seems kind of standard for a lot of, horror film fare. Because this film didn't cost all that much, though, it's set to break even and start making some profit for Warner Brothers. Hey, kudos to Warner Brothers finally making a movie that makes money. Who would have thought it would have been a low-budget horror film? How original. Sisu from Lionsgate expected to make $5 million. Again, no box office estimates yet on this movie, as it is a very limited release. And I know a lot of people have been wanting to see it, but it's not coming out in all theaters. Big George Foreman from Sony/Affirm. I think that's a faith-based company. Coming out around 3,000 screens, $4.4 million. Dungeons & Dragons still hanging around, but again, even if the film has the best drops in the world, it's just never going to be enough because of how much it costs to make. John Wick Chapter 4 continuing to hang around as well. Again, very happy to see the number continuing to be there. Amazon Studios' massive flop Air continuing also to hang around. Still not going to be enough. Guy Ritchie's The Covenant, unfortunately, is seeing a 48% drop, which is not the worst drop in the world, but this film needs to start doing a heck of a lot better here if it's going to ever have a chance of breaking even, which, again, I'm right now going to say based on these numbers, it has no chance, which is sad because the film is a pretty solid film. Guy Ritchie is continuing to kill it in his movies. Again, this is definitely not the strongest of his films over the last few years, but it is still a very good film, right? It's kind of like, hey, Guy Ritchie makes a bad movie. It's not a bad movie, though, right? His worst is still better than the vast majority of other things because his worst is still a pretty good movie. Now, of course, I am leaving out anything that's related with Disney because, yeah, I don't really believe that he has full control of those projects because if I look at a film like, what was it, Aladdin that he did? Yeah, I can't believe that he actually did that based off of what you see in the film, how terrible the film is, and then compare it to his other movies. Again, just one thing is not like the other, right? So, again, as far as the films that he has full control over, again, his worst is still a pretty solid film. Beau is Afraid, also from A24, having, again, this weird release schedules. Expected to add another $2 million there. From what people have told me, it's not a film that I probably would have much interest in. As I said, right, we're looking at some pretty impressive numbers here for Super Mario Brothers. Right, it has already passed the $900 million worldwide, and it's just going to continue to add to that. Currently, based on the numbers.com, as you can see right now, worldwide, it's at $909.9 million, and it's just going to continue to add to that. So again, domestically, they're projecting this to be around $940 million or so by the end of this weekend. You add in those international numbers, and you can see why the film is going to be somewhere between, $980 and $1 billion by the end of the weekend. And that's, again, without even accounting for the new markets in South Korea and in Japan. So speaking of those numbers, let's go ahead and dive into that for a second. Let me see if I can find the actual numbers here. Here we go. So it says, recall that Korea opens today and Japan is due to join the party on Friday. So obviously this was from the other day. In the former, the early estimated opening day plus previews is $774,000. So again, for us in the domestic market, that doesn't sound like a whole lot, but I think what is more important is to try to look and see what this is indicating, or rather what this is doing in the market compared to other films that are getting released there. And so unfortunately, and again, take this with a grain of salt, the only information I can really find, because no one's really covering this all that much, is from Reddit. The subreddit of Box Office. But again, they do give a link here to Korean Film Analysis, as it says here on the opening day. And again, this is from a while ago, from 20 hours ago, $576,000 on its first day, which again is not the terrible thing there because it has actually some pretty high ratings. So it's again it's being very well received by the audiences. But it says here, walk-ups are very poor, worse than even Avatar 2, which was super pre-sale heavy in the market, according to this analysis. So take it with a grain of salt, but it is looking like the film is maybe not going to be doing as well in that market as had been projected. Doesn't mean it's not going to do well at all. It just means that based on what we are seeing, right? The film is actually coming in behind another release. As you can see, coming in the number 2 film behind a local film called Dream, and going and pulling this up for a second, as you can see, if you look at the April 27th numbers, right, you have Dream in number 1, Super Mario in number 2. But also looking again at the daily gross of these films, and what you're seeing is, okay, yeah, I mean, this film is definitely the number 2, but it's also not, again, showing anything that I think is all that impressive numbers-wise. Going the day before, as you can see, you have 577 versus the 555. Interesting and weird that they have it marked in that capacity. So I'm wondering if the early estimates were Dream was in first place, and then they have to adjust these films. So, hey, it looks like in its opening day, it actually ended up beating Dream. However, it looks like it did lose to Dream in its second day. Again, still obviously ruling the marketplace, and it's a very different market too, so it's not, again, a one-to-one analysis that you can really use comparing what it's doing here versus what it would be doing here in the United States or in the North American market. Still, though, again, it's doing well, but it is, again, as I've mentioned this previously, when it comes to film releases in Asian countries especially, it's not always the case, but it's usually the case that local releases especially do a lot better. And again, it's because of this concept of Western influence in films. And so that's why even on the subreddit of Box Office, it talks about saying, again, how will it actually do in Japan? And it says here some different notes, right? Japan is the home country of Nintendo. Nintendo is culturally very significant there. Nintendo makes about 50% of its US revenue in Japan off its games and consoles, which is impressive when you consider that Japan only has 37% of the population of the United States. It does also say the movie is releasing right before Golden Week, which is going to be a holiday, likely inflating the box office numbers. So again, could be a very strong indication there. It says the highest box office for an older Illumination film in Japan was 8.85 billion yen, which is $662 million for Despicable Me 3. This run happened back in 2017. Since then, many other Illumination movies have grossed over 5.35 billion yen of $40 million. So this is kind of getting what's going on before, right? This is the kind of point that I was trying to make, which is that this, again, when it comes to films in this marketplace, there really isn't a film like this release. Really isn't a film like the Super Mario Brothers movie to compare it to, because if you do look historically at other films that have been released, Western films that have been released, and again, even though Nintendo does have a stake in this movie, it is still a Western release, right? The primary distributor of this film is not Nintendo. The distributor of the film is Universal. That is a Western company. So I think the question that even they're asking, and this is the question that I ask, and we just don't know the answer yet, is, okay, how much of an impact is that going to have on the moving-going population, right? Is the love for Mario going to be enough to overcome that typical bias that you see in that Eastern market? Again, right now, it doesn't look like it is happening to nearly the degree that we've seen in other places in South Korea, based on the fact that a local film is doing a little bit better. However, it is still too early to tell, and these numbers are going to continue to update. We'll get the full box office analysis this coming Sunday when the full numbers for Korea's opening and the full numbers for the Super Mario Bros. Film opening come out. Either way, though, as I've mentioned in the very beginning of the video, I think the film is going to cross $1 billion even before these markets are coming into play, and that's the reason why I think, hey, big question now is how much past $1 billion does it make? 1.3 to 1.6 right now is what I think is possible, but we'll have to wait and see. What are y'all's thoughts about this, though? Do you think the film is going to do a heck of a lot better in South Korea than it currently is? Also, maybe do you have other insights into the South Korean marketplace that maybe I'm missing? And also, what do you think the overall numbers for Japan are going to be? Again, I do obviously know, and I do read some of the comments about how, oh yeah, well, Japan's opening weekend, don't let that be the thing that determines whether or not the film's going to be a success or not, because Japan doesn't go to the movies the same way as American audiences or other European audiences even. And again, I will give you that, but remember, we're going to take that opening weekend number and we're going to compare that to other films. That's the only way that we have any really indication of whether a film, or how a film rather, is going to perform, is basing it off of historical standards. And I don't know why some people just don't quite understand this logic. But anyway, we're going to continue to cover this stuff. And once we do get some actual real opening numbers for the film in those markets, we will continue to analyze those things as they come in. But what are y'all's thoughts about this? Let me know in the comment section down below. If you like this video, smash that like button, that fire button, honestly, smash the rumble button as well. Also, if you are a member at the Keep It Bifrost level or above on either Patreon, Subscribestar, or Locals, again, only those 3 places, remember that you have access to the Discord, specifically to the giveaways channel on the Discord channel, because I wanted to mention that currently there is an open giveaway for this beautiful John Wick series, chapters 1 and 2 in this stash book collection. So a very, very high value collector's item here, and that is currently open. I'm probably going to close that either tonight or sometime this weekend, and we'll choose one winner. So just one winner there. But again, keep at the Bifrost level or above. Either Patreon, Subscribestar, or Locals are eligible. And again, make sure that you're a part of the Discord server and you look for the giveaways channel, and reach out to me if you are having trouble finding it. Anyway, have a wonderful day, everybody. And as always, God bless. And now for a huge special shout out to all of my Patreon Subscribe Star and Locals members who are at the Keeper of the Bifrost level and above. Starting off with Patreon with Father Luca Illick, Garrett Searles, Joe Horn, Jonathan Carney, Orange Hat Reviews, who you can check out over at his YouTube channel by the same name, Laura, the Modern Major General Story, Rosetta Allen, who you can check out at her YouTube channel at Eagle Writer, and Miss Modern Muses, who you can check out at her YouTube channel by the same name as well. To my Subscribe Star people, we got Matt317, check him out on his Twitch channel by the same name, Fast Reaction, The R, Mr. Roy, J-Rod the Beer Guru, and the K-Man, and you can check out the K-Man over at xtheboundaries.co. And lastly, to my Locals members, Miss Minnesota Hockey Fan, How About a Hockey Player, J.H. Schwalbach, Brett D90, and the amazing lawyer, Robert Barnes. If you want your name shouted out at the end of every video and live stream, check out the top link in the video description below to join the Keeper of the Bifrost level. You also get access to other things like a podcast that I do every month with John the Flickpick Flickinger, and also I do giveaways for my Keeper of the Bifrost level people and above, and also my Chosen of Valhalla monthly stream. If any of that stuff sounds interesting, especially those giveaways, which I do give away 4K steelbooks, all kinds of stuff all month long, check out that top link. You're all amazing and beautiful people. Hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day, a blessed Easter, and as always, God bless.